leaving the gates, and I'm quite sure in his hand he's got some very, very interesting notes that he will have been making. We'll just say to people that what sort of prison is Swansea? Well, we didn't have to look far to see that it isn't necessarily a safe environment. This is a prison inmate was found dead in his cell a few days ago. He was only 40 years of age. At the moment, there are no details of the cause of death, but of course, death in prison cells is not uncommon. Well, Guy, I can imagine you're very pleased to be out, and the sun is shining for you.
It is. The sunshine always favours the brave, apparently, Brian.
Well done. Well, just before we get back to the court case itself, tell us what your experience was like in Swansea Prison.
Swansea Prison itself, I'd never been there before. I got dragged across from Aberystwyth to Swansea in one of these sweat boxes, these metal box container things. When I got there, they were very, very good, very sort of nice, sort of little local prison, as it were. The governor was one of the first people to come and introduce himself to me, shook my hand and said, "You'll be out Thursday morning," which is a bit of a shock because I thought that 7 days as a civilian prisoner, which is what I was, apparently. I was there by consent, apparently. I didn't think, I thought I had to do the whole 7 days. But anyway, so yeah, inside the prison, the food was okay. I'd heard about the guy possibly committing suicide, but I can't confirm that when I was in there. All very nice and sort of neat, and people aren't allowed to smoke in there anymore, which I thought might have caused them a problem. But they've had that going for 3 weeks now, so I've heard there's been a few scenes, but we don't know. I mean, people are under pressure in there, and they can't even smoke. I suppose I'm not a smoker myself, but I can imagine that would cause great stress to people. But the prison itself was very efficient as far as the prisons are. I was locked up with a Polish lad who could hardly speak any English, and all his relatives were abroad, and he didn't really know what to do, so I was trying to help him. So it occupied my time amongst taking notes over what had actually happened in the court, and with the police and with the Reliance guys, or Amy guys they were. I kept plenty of notes of it, so I've got plenty to go through now I'm back home.
Guy, thank you for that. And you did receive some mail, I believe, from supporters and people concerned at what had happened to you.
The most emotional time I can honestly say I've ever had in prison was when I received mail from the public, from people I don't know. They sent me proper goodwill messages, cards, money, and I know that the whole system was blocked up with people ringing while I was in there, and that, the court and the prison. So, I mean, I'm humbled by the support that I've had, including from you guys. I mean, I really am humbled.
Well, Guy, at the end of the day, you've been putting your neck on the line in so many ways by simply telling the truth about what's been going on. Everything from these corrupt mortgages to the corruption in Britain's judicial and court system. So let's come back to the court case itself. Tell us in your own words. We've heard from other people, members of the public who were present in the magistrate's court. We've heard from them what took place, but perhaps you'd tell us in your own words. And one of the things we've got to show our viewers today is part of an email, which is a complaint that's already been sent through to the court service complaining about the conduct of the clerk, Mr. Cray. So what actually happened in that court that you then ended up in prison?
Well, just to rewind very briefly, I'd been arrested for something I'd never been for failure to surrender to bail originally, a month before, and they'd surrounded my house. They said I'd not surrendered to bail back in January. I said I'd never been on bail, I'd never been arrested, never been charged, never been interviewed. I didn't know what it was about, never received a summons. But the police arrested me, didn't show me a warrant, which was an abuse under section 13.5 of the criminal procedure rules. And they dragged me over to Aberystwyth then. And I said, I don't know what this case is about. I don't know anything about it. So what's going on? And the clerk of the court, and we had plenty of people there on that day as well, Salon and Tom Crawford, including them, and David Morgan. They said that I would receive all paperwork, because obviously you can't plead to something if you don't know what it's about, without first seeing the evidence. And I hadn't received anything. So at that point, they bailed me to appear back on the 11th. and the clerk of the court, a woman at that time, I said that I'd require prior, we'd need business in the court prior to the hearing on the 11th, and we'd need a Turnbull hearing, and we'd need possibly a Galbraith hearing, which that means I'd be questioning the identity of what's going on because I knew nothing about it. It was agreed. I didn't plead. I said, I'm not going to plead something I don't know anything about, which was accepted. And they said, come back on the 11th and you will have all the paperwork by the 4th. Well, of course, the 4th came and went and I never received anything. So the first business before the court when we went there on the 11th was to establish that I didn't know what this case was about and I hadn't received any paperwork. It was really that simple. And that's business before the court, before the case begins. So myself and Linda travelled over. We set off for about 6 o'clock in the morning, got to Aberystwyth, rushed into court. We were first in the court. There was a little bit of discord straight away because the usher told Linda to sit somewhere, and then the clerk started shouting she had to go in the public gallery or she'd be removed. And that was a bit concerning, but okay, I sat there. Now, I said, I've business before the court, and I was shouted down. And he said, right, your name is Guy Taylor, your date of birth is. I said, listen, I can't confirm or deny the date of birth. I said, I accept you've probably got the 28th of the 9th, 62 on there, and I can accept it for these proceedings, but I'm not confirming that is my date of birth.
Guy, if I can just interject there, when you say he, you're actually talking about this gentleman, Mr. Cray, the clerk, is that right?
That's right, Brian, yeah. I apologise for that. I should have explained in more detail. Yeah, the clerk, this Mr. Cray, said, started getting a bit heated at that point and saying to me, well, you're trying to make trouble. No. I said, look, I'm happy to go along because I actually wanted the thing dealt with. He then said, guilty or not guilty? Do you plead guilty or not guilty? I said, well, I can't enter a plea because I don't know what this case is about. I've received no information. So he then started shouting over me, oh, he's causing trouble, I want him removed from the court. So I looked at the magistrate at this point, a gentleman and 2 people with him. And he looked at me and, I mean, because the guy was acting like he was on drugs. I mean, he was really shouting and getting upset. And you could see everyone, no one felt comfortable in the building. And it was quite simple, really. There was business before the court. Simple as that. So they removed me and they put me in the box, in the glass box there. So I was in there and they cleared the court. And then I was saying, listen, I'm happy to just sit there and go through this, but no one was listening to me. They called the police. The police all came in, probably about half a dozen of them. Now, at this point, I was feeling quite dry. I'd driven from 6 in the morning. I just got there, and I wasn't expecting this at all. I was expecting it to be a normal court case. You know, taking into account, I've dealt with hundreds of court cases all over the country, so I certainly wasn't expecting this palaver. I mean, as I say, I could probably get a reference from some courts, Hereford and Worcester. I probably could, yeah, because of the amount of business I've done in there. But anyway, I said, can I have a drink of water? Now, no one would give me a drink of water, and I was trapped in the box with no one in there with me. And this went on then for half an hour. So for half an hour, they were saying that they couldn't open the door because where I was locked, they didn't have a key. At the end of half an hour, didn't need a key because it opened from that side of the court. But anyway, I said to the police at this point, I want you to stay in the court and I want you to witness proceedings because I said there's something going on in here. I don't know what it is, but I want you to witness because I don't feel correct and I feel that my safety is in danger. And anyway, cut a long story short, from that, you know, from all the interactions, the police were then told to take me into custody. So I, at this point, then said, what am I being arrested for? And the police said, you're not being arrested. I said, well, then no, I shouldn't be in your custody. I said, if you're arresting me for contempt of court, then fine. I'll be offered the opportunity to explain my actions in the police station. And then this clerk jumped up again. No, you're not arresting him for contempt. He's been held in contempt. And they whipped me off through the back doors. The police then took me into the police vehicle and down the police station. The police were, to be honest with you, great. And they know about this, what I was saying, that there's basically a network, there's a cabal all over the country, which we know about, of these characters that have infiltrated the court system, the police, you know, the whole judiciary. And the police down there didn't put me in. They processed me. I said, you've moved me from the court when I'm supposed to be in the court's custody. Right? They said, we accept that, but there's no court staff there in the cells. I said, well, in that case, you've transported me, and you're probably not even insured to do so. Anyway, they were very nice, the coppers. The sergeant made me a cup of tea, and about 6 or 7 of them stood around talking to me about what was going on. And they were very shocked themselves. But they were well aware of, they call themselves the Tafia, apparently, up there. These characters, the guys who have usurped our court system, I suppose, really and truthfully. And they took me back to the courts, and then we went through that process then where they said to me that they'd found me guilty in my absence because I'd failed to turn up for the case.
I'm just, I'm at that point, Guy. Of course, I'm laughing here, but this is so serious. So you're held in custody, and then they find you guilty in your absence because you failed to turn up. Did I?
Exactly.
Right, I did hear that correctly.
Yeah, you heard that correctly, Brian. That's exactly what they do.
Right. Okay. And so what happens after that? Because there's another part to the case.
Yes. So then, what I'd done at this point, I'd said I want to see the duty solicitor. Now, the last time I'd been brought in, I said I want to see him, not to represent me, but I wanted him to make a record because he's an officer of the court. He can make a record of what was going on. And I'd asked for the same guy, I forget his name, Gethwin, I think it is, Gethwin Davis, I think his name is. Very nice chap. He completely conferred with everything I was saying. And he said, I'll go and find out what I can, and then I'll sit there and make a record of what's going on your behalf. You know, I'm not representing you, but I'll do that. And I said, thank you. And he came back and he said, right, well, they found you guilty in your absence, so they'll have to deal with that. But they'll also charge you with contempt. And I said, well, did they charge me? And he said, well, yes, but this becomes where it becomes a grey area because I was being held in contempt, not charged with contempt. So he said, you'll then be asked if you will apologise to the court. And he said, I presume you won't. I said, well, I'll say that I don't know what the hell's going on. He said, fine. He said, at that point, the magistrates will be kicked out of the court and they will get new magistrates to listen to that. So I said, right. But the problem isn't with the magistrates. The problem is with the clerk. And he'll still be running the circus in there. And he agreed with me. And he said, I've said to them, you realise this man will appeal? And they said, yes. And he said, but then he's going to have the contempt charge placed on him. He said, yes, but this man will appeal. And he said, you know, they didn't seem to comprehend what he was saying. So he said, I completely agree with what you're saying on this, and I will be in there taking notes. So they then dragged me into the court to be sentenced for the thing that I'd been found guilty of in my absence because I'd failed to attempt. And they fined me, I don't know what they were talking hundreds of this and amounts of that, and I couldn't really hear through the glass box. How long, what was my income? I said, well, basically it was none of their business, but I haven't got an income. So how will you pay the fine? I said, well, if I get an appeal through in 28 days, then I'll pay it. So I put a proviso on it. So they accepted that, because of course I won't get an appeal through within 28 days. But of course, I then had to be dealt with for the contempt issue. And of course, no, I'm jumping the gun here. I actually got pulled into the box then to be dealing with the contempt. When they allowed me to speak then, in front of these new magistrates. So I went into the box, I explained, listen, I don't know what this matter's about, I should never have been found guilty of it. All I was doing was questioning what evidence there was, because I can't defend something I know not what it is. And I was shouted over by this clerk. I said I've reported him to the police, which I did do. I said I reported him for kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment. He then got really upset when he realised I'd done that and said, oh, you've reported me to the police. And I said, yes, I have. What more have you done to me? So this went on, and they had to listen to what I had to say, although they said, well, this is a separate case now, separate case. You've already been, that's nothing to do with now. I said, well, it is, because it's the circumstances that are leading up to why I'm here for this alleged contempt of whatever it is. And I then explained to them, well, you know, I said, listen, when I was shouted over, when I was told that I couldn't plead, I had to plead, when I know that we all got the right to remain silent, but it wasn't a case of that. I was just saying that I didn't know what I was pleading to. I said, and this gentleman was telling me that I had to plead. Obviously, I knew I didn't, and he's wrong in law. And that's simple as that. I said, I did get passionate about it when I got dragged off to the box, and I may have called him a clown, which is what he had said. But I can assure you that I wasn't trying to upset anybody. I was the one who was intimidated and being bullied and threatened. So I was the one. But if my passion in any way came across to any way frighten anybody, then I can apologise. And he said, well, I'm not prepared to accept that apology. So I thought, well, hang on, it's not you I'm apologising to, it's the court, isn't it? I said it was 6 of one and half a dozen of another. And then he was then started to cross-examine me, which was an insane thing to do, really. And then he started to give evidence about it. And of course, the magistrates then retired. And prior to that, a lady who I didn't recognise being in the court earlier, but she may have been, gave evidence that I'd been upset and that I wasn't able to wasn't given a drink, but that I wasn't complying with pleading guilty or not guilty. But I mean, the clerk in the court, literally in the face of the court, was it's almost like these people don't know what the truth is. The solicitor who was taking the records of it in the back of the court, he said to the magistrates, Mr. Taylor previously pleaded not guilty to this. And I said, no, I hadn't, because I hadn't. I'd said I needed whatever documents they had to plead anything. And he said that I'd been represented by the duty solicitor, which I looked at the duty solicitor and he shook his head. So he said, obviously, he'd received any information on the case. And so I shouted across to the solicitor, have you received anything? And he shook his head and said, no. So this palaver was going on in front of the magistrate. So that was, he was telling lies. Everything he came out of his mouth was an absolute lie. But I mean, the whole situation had been contrived and they conspired to create a narrative. And that's what we can prove. And this is why they can send me on a regular basis down to Swansea Prison for a few days if they want to expose themselves in this way, because I mean that's all that's happened, and the campaign for what's going on has increased amazingly. Amazing.
Guy, thank you very much for giving us such a detailed account of what took place, and of course this is unbelievably serious because it represents a complete breakdown of justice and law and order in this country. This is the same country, of course, where David Cameron is standing on a world stage telling other leaders of sovereign nations how to run their business. This is the obscenity of David Cameron's Conservative government. But I'm just going to bring on screen part of an email. This has been sent into the court service. It's only an excerpt from it, but it's been sent to Natalie Tierney, I think her name is there, Chief Executive of the court service, and it's in relation to the clerk, Michael Cray. And the person who sent this email in, a complaint, says, well, let's look at the standards that are expected of public servants. They declare that they were themselves a public servant of over 30 years. So the following standards: honesty, impartiality, openness, accountability, accuracy, fairness, integrity, transparency, objectivity, reliability, were all broken by Michael Cray in his conduct with you in the court. And I think you might be interested about this because a number of people took a in-depth look at Mr. Cray and were horrified to see the sort of things that was on his Facebook social media page, where clearly he has got friends in Dafford and Powys Police, so that's all very cosy. But he's also got some very dubious content, such as naughty Pembroke and naughty Penner and Bufferland. Now this is to do with sexual matters, I believe swingers. I may be wrong on that, but we won't go too deep into what we we and other people saw. But also, he's quite happy to suggest that if you're a Tory, you should be culled. And he's also been making derogatory remarks about David Cameron as Prime Minister. So this is just one excerpt from the material that's now been given to the court service. But on all the points that you've raised and members of the public have raised, this man was not fit to be in the court. And the next question we have to ask is, how is it the clerk was able simply to rule the roost over the magistrates present? Just a short reply, Guy, and then we must move on with the news.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, I've got a lot to catch up on. I've only just got home, right? And thank you for that. And yes, I mean, you know, public standards and public life. Who is this guy? What is he about? And why was he allowed to go there? Apparently, he was new to the court. Apparently, the court staff in there said they didn't know him. So, I mean, this goes on. It was, as I said, it was contrived and it was conspired as a narrative for what happened that day. And thank you, the people who are looking into this stuff. We need to know who these people are, yeah. And what they're dictating over our lives. We need to know who they are, and this is wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Well, this is the power of exposure, and for our viewers and listeners who do ask us regularly, what can we do? What can we do? We have a perfect example here. It isn't the government, it isn't local authorities, it isn't the court system that are doing the damage, that are involved in the corruption. Of course, it's individuals, it's real people, and they have names and they have home addresses. So exposure is a very powerful thing, and it's amazing what can be found on the internet with a little bit of research. Guy, thank you very much for that. We'll let you go. I'm sure you need a coffee and at least 2 chocolate biscuits to get over that experience. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Speak to you later.